Today we're counting down 18 NFL records that will never be broken. From ridiculous single-game performances to unbelievable career milestones, let's kick it off with a bang. Don't forget to subscribe. Starting off strong, let's talk about Derrick Thomas setting a record for sacks that hasn't been touched since it happened on Veterans Day 1990. Thomas was in his second NFL season, already establishing himself as a premier pass rusher. Playing for the Kansas City Chiefs, he faced a struggling Seattle Seahawks offensive line and quarterback Dave Krieg. What followed was nothing short of legendary. By the time the clock ran out, Thomas had sacked Krieg 7 times. Thomas's 7 sacks accounted for a mind-boggling 54 yards lost for the Seahawks. Think about that, an entire half of a football field erased by just one man. What makes this performance even crazier is the missed opportunity for sack number 8. With time running out and the Chiefs leading 16-10, Thomas broke through the line again, bearing down on Krieg for what should have been the game-stealing sack. But Krieg somehow slipped free and launched a 24-yard touchdown pass to Paul Scansey. The Seahawks went on to kick the extra points and win the game 17-16. Despite the heartbreaking ending for Thomas and the Chiefs, there is no way to break this record. Modern offenses rely on quick passing to neutralize elite pass rushers, making it incredibly difficult for defenders to rack up multiple sacks in a game. On top of that, defensive players today are rotated more frequently to stay fresh, which limits the total number of opportunities for an individual player to dominate like Thomas did. Another factor to consider is how teams game plan against elite defenders. Teams will throw double teams, chip blocks, or even entire schemes at a player like Thomas to slow him down. Yet in 1990, none of that mattered. Thomas lined up on the same side for nearly every play and still dismantled Seattle. The closest anyone has come to breaking this record is Elvis Dumervil, who recorded 6 sacks in a college game in 2005, but that's not the NFL. To this day, no one has managed to match Thomas's dominance. Next up is Jerry Rice's career receiving yards record. I think that's one of the most untouchable achievements in sports, let alone football. Rice's dominance came in an era when passing offenses weren't nearly as prolific as they are today. Modern quarterbacks regularly eclipse 4,000 or even 5,000 passing yards in a season. But during Rice's peak, a 3,000-yard passing season from a quarterback was considered elite. Despite this, Rice put up numbers that would still dominate in today's high-flying offense. He averaged over 80 yards per game for his career, which is incredible considering the length of his playing time. Rice played 20 seasons in the NFL. You heard me right, 20 seasons, which is rare for any position, let alone wide receiver. Rice was known for his legendary off-season training that let him perform at his highest level all those years. Second, Rice also had the benefit of playing in a perfect system. Under Bill Walsh's West Coast offense, Rice thrived as Joe Montana's and later Steve Young's go-to target. The short, precise passing game allowed Rice to showcase his ability to turn routine catches into massive gains. To understand how ridiculous this record is, consider what it would take to break it. A player would need to average 1,000 receiving yards per season for over 22 years. Keep in mind, only a handful of players even reach 1,000 yards in a single season, and very few can maintain that level of performance for a decade, let alone over 2. With 22,895 career receiving yards, Rice set a standard that no one else has even come close to touching. The gap between Rice and the second-place receiver, Larry Fitzgerald, is almost 5,500 yards. That's more than some Hall of Fame receivers' entire careers. It's no exaggeration to say his career receiving yards record will likely never be broken. Emmitt Smith's record of career rushing yards stands at number 16 on my list. Smith spent the majority of his career with the Dallas Cowboys, where he was the focal point of one of the most dominant offenses in NFL history. His running style wasn't flashy, but it was brutally effective. Playing behind one of the greatest offensive lines in NFL history, and paired with Hall of Fame quarterback Troy Aikman and wide receiver Michael Irvin, Smith had the support needed to maximize his potential. While critics sometimes point to his supportive cast, the numbers speak for themselves. Smith holds the NFL record for the most rushing touchdowns with 164, and for the most career rushing yards, 18,355. He played 15 seasons in the NFL as well, an eternity for a running back. From 1991 to 1995, He led the league in rushing 4 times and racked up over 8,000 yards during that span. In 1993, he famously played through a separated shoulder in a must-win game against the Giants, rushing for 168 yards and catching 10 passes to secure the NFC East title. To put Smith's record of 18,355 career rushing yards into perspective, consider the second-place holder, Walter Payton, who finished his career with 16,726 rushing yards. Smith surpassed the number by over 1,600 yards, the equivalent of a full Pro Bowl level season. Modern greats like Adrian Peterson have 14,918 and Frank Gore 16,000 came closer than most but still fell far too short. No active player is even remotely on pace to catch Smith. Next on my list is Brett Favre's streak of consecutive regular season starts, something we'll likely never see again. Favre's streak began on September 27, 1992, when he made his first start for the Green Bay Packers after replacing an injured Don Majkowski that previous week. From that point on, Favre became the definition of reliability. He played through a broken thumb, sprained ankles and knee injuries, and countless other ailments that would have sidelined most players. In one game, he famously threw 4 touchdown passes just hours after learning about his father's passing. To put this into perspective, the second longest streak by a quarterback is Philip Rivers with 240 games. That's impressive, but it still falls more than 3 full seasons short of Favre's mark. Peyton Manning, one of the most durable quarterbacks of his generation, managed 208 consecutive starts before a neck injury sidelined him for an entire season. His 297 consecutive starts remain a testament to his toughness and love for the game. Don Shula's career coaching wins represent a record that stands at the pinnacle of NFL greatness. Over a remarkable 33-year career, Shula achieved a level of success and consistency that no coach has come close to matching. Shula's coaching career began in 1963 with the Baltimore Colts, but his true legacy was cemented during his 26-year tenure with the Miami Dolphins. In the early 1970s, he built a Dolphin squad around a dominant running game and a stout defense, culminating in the NFL's only perfect season in 1972. Later in his career, Shula pivoted to a pass-heavy offense with Dan Marino, one of the most prolific quarterbacks in NFL history. Among active coaches, Bill Belichick is often mentioned as the only one with a remote chance of catching Shula. As of now, Belichick is still 14 wins behind the 71-year-old. Given that Belichick is only 14 wins shy of Shula's record, surpassing it within a few seasons is feasible if he continues coaching. The question is, will he do it in 2025, or will we have to wait till 2026? Put your bets in the comments. If you think about it, a new coach would need an average 10 wins per season for 35 years to even approach Shula's total. Don Shula's 374 wins represent more than just a number. They symbolize a lifetime of dedication, innovation, and excellence. Standing at number 13 is Dick Night Train Lane's record of interceptions in a single season. What makes this record even more astonishing is that Lane achieved it in 1952 during his rookie season and in just 12 games. Lane wasn't drafted out of college like most NFL players. He earned his spot on the Rams as an undrafted free agent after serving in the US Army. In fact, he initially approached the team looking for a job in their front office, but ended up earning a roster spot after showcasing his athleticism in a tryout. From there, he became one of the most feared defenders in the league. Lane was an elite athlete with the size, speed, and strength to compete with any receiver. Standing at 6 feet 1 inch and 194 pounds, a big cornerback by any era standards, he had the physical tools to dominate. His tackles were as punishing as his ball-hawking skills, and he intimidated opposing receivers into thinking twice before venturing into his area of the field. Lane's hits were so iconic that the NFL eventually banned his signature move, the Night Train neck tackle, for safety reasons. Some modern players have come close to breaking this record. Lester Hayes with 13 interceptions in 1980, and Everson Walls with 11 interceptions in 1981. However, both occurred during 16-game seasons. The modern NFL makes this record virtually unbreakable. Today's quarterbacks are far more accurate and careful with the football, and defensive schemes are much more complex, spreading opportunities for interceptions across multiple players. Lane finished his career with 68 interceptions total, and Dick Night Train Lane's 14 interception 1952 season still stands as one of the most unbreakable records in football history. Tom Brady's Super Bowl appearance is a record that sets him apart from every other player in the NFL. There are only two NFL franchises, the New England Patriots at 11 and the Pittsburgh Steelers at 8, that have more Super Bowl appearances than Brady does by himself. He also has more appearances than iconic franchises like the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. It's almost absurd to think that one player, no matter how great, could sustain this level of success over such a long period. Brady's Super Bowl appearances span 21 years, from his first trip in the 2001 season to his 10th in 2020. During this time, he appeared in Super Bowls with two different teams, the New England Patriots 9 times and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers once. Along the way, he earned 7 Super Bowl titles, another NFL record, and claimed 5 Super Bowl MVP awards. Brady's path to these Super Bowls wasn't always smooth. In his 10 appearances, he faced off against 10 different quarterbacks and endured some of the toughest playoff runs in NFL history. Whether it was defeating the greatest show on turf Rams in his first Super Bowl, surviving the Seahawks' Legion of Boom defense, or outdueling Patrick Mahomes in Super Bowl 55, Brady consistently rose to the occasion. His first 3 Super Bowl wins with the Patriots came during a defensive-minded era where Brady was a game manager. However, by the mid-2010s, he was an offensive juggernaut, leading one of the most prolific passing attacks in NFL history. No other quarterback has come close, and with today's competitive balance in the NFL, it's hard to imagine anyone even approaching Brady's 10 Super Bowl appearances. In my opinion, this cements Brady's status as the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. Number 11 brings us LaDainian Tomlinson's record-setting number of touchdowns in the 2006 NFL season. The 2006 Chargers were a powerhouse, finishing the regular season 14-2. While they ultimately fell short in the playoffs, Tomlinson was unstoppable that year. He carried the ball 348 times for 1,815 rushing yards, an average of 5.2 yards per carry. He also added 508 receiving yards on 56 catches. One of the most memorable moments of that season came in Week 14 against the Denver Broncos. Tomlinson scored his 29th touchdown to break Shaun Alexander's previous record of 28 touchdowns set just a year earlier. His teammates immediately surrounded him to celebrate. Breaking down the numbers highlights just how dominant Tomlinson was that year. He averaged nearly 2 touchdowns per game and scored against some of the league's best defenses, including the Baltimore Ravens and New England Patriots. LaDainian Tomlinson's 31 touchdown season is a masterpiece. In today's NFL, with its shifting dynamics and emphasis on the passing game, it's hard to imagine anyone coming close to replicating LT's historic 2006 season. Starting top 10 of the list is Otto Graham's record of leading the Cleveland Browns to the most consecutive championship games. That's one of the most incredible achievements in football history even Brady couldn't beat. Graham's streak began in the All-American Football Conference, where the Browns immediately became a powerhouse under head coach Paul Brown. In the AAFC's 4-year existence, the Browns won every championship, with Graham at the helm. During this stretch, Graham's efficient passing and ability to manage the game revolutionized the quarterback position. When the AAFC folded in 1949, the Browns joined the NFL in 1950. The critics doubted whether they could maintain their dominance against tougher competition. Graham and the Browns answered the question emphatically. In their first season in the NFL, they won the championship, defeating the Los Angeles Rams 30-28 in an absolutely thrilling game. From 1950 to 1955, the Browns appeared in 6 straight NFL championship games, winning 3 of them. In his final game, the 1955 NFL Championship, Graham threw for 2 touchdowns and ran for 2 more, leading the Browns to a 38-14 victory over the Rams. He retired immediately after that, ending his career with an astounding .814 winning percentage as a starting quarterback. Graham's 10 consecutive championship appearances included 7 victories, a level of success that is unmatched in professional football. Even Tom Brady has appeared in 10 Super Bowls, but not consecutively. The NFL's current structure, with free agency, a salary cap, and expanded playoffs, makes it nearly impossible for any team to dominate the league year after year the way the Browns did, making this record virtually untouchable. Let's talk about losses for a second. The Buffalo Bills' run of consecutive Super Bowl losses is a record that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. The Bills' streak began in the 1990 season, led by quarterback Jim Kelly, running back Thurman Thomas, and wide receiver Andre Reed, all future Hall of Famers. The team was an offensive juggernaut. Under head coach Marv Levy, the Bulls utilized the fast-paced K-gun offense, which was ahead of its time and incredibly hard to defend. The defense, anchored by Hall of Fame pass rusher Bruce Smith, wasn't too shabby either. In their first Super Bowl appearance, the Bills faced the New York Giants in Super Bowl 25. It was a tight, low-scoring affair that came down to one of the most infamous moments in NFL history. Bills kicker Scott Norwood lined up for a 47-yard field goal to win the game, but his kick sailed wide right. The Bills lost 20-19, a game they were favored to win, and their Super Bowl heartbreak began. The following year, Buffalo was back in the big game, this time facing the Washington Redskins. Unlike the nail-biter against the Giants, this game was one-sided. The Redskins dominated from start to finish, jumping out to a 24-0 lead before the Bills managed a few late scores. The final result was a 37-24 loss, leaving the Bills 0-2 in Super Bowls. Super Bowl 27 in the 1992 season offered a chance of redemption, but the Bills ran into a Dallas Cowboys team that was at the peak of its powers. Led by Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin, the Cowboys steamrolled the Bills 52-17. Turnovers were the story of the game, as Buffalo coughed up the ball 9 times, including a memorable fumble return for a touchdown by Cowboys defensive lineman Leon Lett. Well, almost, until Don Beebe chased him down and knocked the ball out of his hand just before he scored. In Super Bowl 28, the Bills earned a rematch against the Cowboys. This time, Buffalo held its own in the first half and even led at halftime. But Emmitt Smith and the Cowboys took over in the second half, and the Bills fell 30-13. It marked their 4th consecutive loss in football's biggest stage. The odds of reaching 4 consecutive Super Bowls and losing are lower than winning the lottery. In the modern NFL, with its parity and grueling playoff format, no team has even come close. Yet the Bills managed to somehow pull it off. Number 8 is Ernie Nevers' record number of points in a single NFL game. Set on November 28, 1929, while playing for the Chicago Cardinals, this achievement has stood the test of time for nearly a century. To understand the magnitude of this accomplishment, it's important to consider the context of the 1920s NFL. The league was still in its infancy, with smaller rosters, and players often taking on multiple roles. Nevers wasn't just a running back, he was also a passer, defender, and kicker. In modern times, he was a one-man offense and defense. In the game against the Chicago Bears, Nevers scored all 40 of the Cardinals' points in a 40-6 victory. Nevers' 6 rushing touchdowns were an NFL record at the time, a mark that has only been tied but never surpassed. Alvin Kamara matched it in 2020, but even he couldn't touch the total points scored in a single game. This wasn't Nevers' only brush with history. In his rookie year, he played nearly every minute of every game, missing just 26 minutes due to appendicitis, and even then, he returned to the field. Stories like these illustrate why Nevers was one of the first players inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1963. In today's NFL, with specialized roles and vastly different scoring dynamics, it's hard to imagine anyone breaking this record. Kickers and runners are separate roles now, and no single player is asked to shoulder the kind of all-encompassing responsibilities Nevers had. Even the greatest modern players, from Jerry Rice to Tom Brady, operate within systems designed for teamwork, not individual dominance across multiple roles. Ernie Nevers' 40-point game is truly a mark of excellence. Who doesn't like winning, right? Well, from 1966 to 1985, the Dallas Cowboys established a streak of consecutive winning seasons that I don't think will ever be broken. Under the leadership of legendary coach Tom Landry, the Cowboys became the gold standard for sustained success, earning their nickname as America's team. At the heart of this streak was Tom Landry, one of the most innovative and respected coaches the game has ever seen. He introduced the flex defense, which revolutionized defensive schemes and repopularized the shotgun formation, giving his quarterbacks more time and flexibility to read defenses. His ability to adapt and evolve over 2 decades was key to maintaining the Cowboys' dominance. The Cowboys roster during this era was stacked with talent. Hall of Famers like Roger Staubach, Bob Lilly, Tony Dorsett, and Randy White were central to the team's success. Each season brought a new batch of challenges, but Landry and his players consistently rose to meet them. Whether it was Staubach engineering a last-minute comeback or Dorsett breaking a long run, the Cowboys had stars who could deliver in clutch moments. During this 20-year run, the Cowboys secured 13 division titles, 5 NFC championships, and 2 Super Bowl victories. They made the playoffs an incredible 18 times, further cementing their place as one of the greatest dynasties in sports history. In the salary cap era, even the most dominant franchise, like the New England Patriots, haven't come close to matching 20 consecutive winning seasons. The Patriots had a remarkable 19 straight winning seasons from 2001 to 2019, but even they fell short of the Cowboys' mark. The Cowboys' streak ended in 1986 with a 7-9 record. By then, Landry's tenure was nearing its conclusion, and the team was beginning to rebuild. However, their legacy was already cemented. At number 6, let's talk about Peyton Manning's 2013 season with the Denver Broncos. Manning was 37 years old and coming off a neck surgery that had sidelined him for the entire 2011 season. Many doubted whether he could even return to his former greatness, let alone produce one of the most prolific offensive seasons in league history. The 2013 Denver Broncos offense was a juggernaut, and Manning was its conductor. Surrounded by weapons like Demaryius Thomas, Wes Walker, Eric Decker, and Julius Thomas, Manning had the perfect combination of skilled players to attack defenses at every level. The offensive line provided stellar protection, giving Manning the time he needed to dissect defenses with his unmatched football IQ. Manning's season started with a bang in Week 1 when he threw an NFL record 7 touchdown passes in a single game against the Baltimore Ravens. He passed for at least 300 yards in 12 of the 16 games that season and had 3 games with over 400 yards. His precision and ability to read defenses were on full display as he completed 68.3% of his passes while averaging a staggering 342.3 yards per game. Week after week, Manning shredded defenses, finishing the year with 55 touchdown passes, another single-season NFL record. Manning's total of 5,477 yards broke Drew Brees' previous record of 5,476 yards set in 2011 by just a single yard. While the margin may seem slim, it highlights just how difficult it is to do that. With more teams employing quick passing games and spreading the ball around, it's rare for one quarterback to dominate statistically to the extent Manning did. I've put Paul Krause's record of career interceptions at number 5. Krause began his career with a bang. Drafted in the second round by the Washington Redskins in 1964, he made an immediate impact as a rookie, leading the league with 12 interceptions. To put that in perspective, 12 interceptions in a single season today would be astronomical. It's an achievement few have unlocked, even in 16-game schedules. After 4 standout seasons with the Redskins, Krause was traded to the Minnesota Vikings. As a member of the Purple People Eaters defense, Krause became the ultimate free safety. He helped the Vikings reach 4 Super Bowls during his tenure, cementing his reputation as one of the greatest defensive players of all time. Spanning a 16-season career from 1964 to 1979, Krause's ball-hawking ability was, and still is, unmatched. Modern quarterbacks spread the ball to multiple targets, and defensive schemes focus more on zone coverage and limiting big plays, rather than creating turnovers. The closest active player to Krause's 81 interceptions is far behind, and the league leader in interceptions for a single season typically doesn't come close to Krause's career average of over 5 per year. I truly believe Krause's 81 career interceptions will remain unbroken forever, don't you think? A step shy of top 3, I've put the 1972 Miami Dolphins' perfect season. Led by the legendary coach, Don Shula, the Dolphins were a well-oiled machine on both sides of the ball. On offense, they had an efficient quarterback duo in Bob Grease and Earl Morrall, supported by an elite rushing attack led by Larry Zonka, Mercury Morris, and Jim Kick. In fact, both Zonka and Morris surpassed 1,000 rushing yards that season, a rare achievement for 2 players on the same team. The Dolphins' defense, nicknamed the No-Name Defense, was equally dominant. Despite not boasting big-name stars, this unit was incredibly disciplined, holding opponents to just 12.2 points per game during the regular season. Players like linebacker Nick Boniconti and defensive back Jake Scott, who later won Super Bowl MVP, ensured that Miami's opponents rarely found the end zone. The Dolphins' road to perfection wasn't without challenges. In Week 3, they narrowly escaped with a 16-14 win over the Minnesota Vikings, thanks to a late blocked field goal attempt. Their toughest test came in the AFC Championship game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Miami trailed at halftime, but rallied behind an inspired performance by their defense and special teams to secure a 21-17 victory. Super Bowl VII, the final step to perfection, saw the Dolphins face the Washington Redskins. The game was a defensive battle, but Miami came out on top with a 14-7 win. Notably, Jake Scott's 2 interceptions were pivotal in sealing the victory. The game is also remembered for kicker Garo Yepremian's infamous blunder while attempting a pass after a botched field goal attempt, which nearly cost Miami their shutout. In 2007, the New England Patriots came close to breaking this record, going 16-0 in the regular season, before losing to the New York Giants in Super Bowl 42. But even they couldn't finish what Miami started. Maybe the Kansas City Chiefs can do it one day. What do you think? At number 3, I reserved a spot for Morten Andersen's record of career games played. Andersen, nicknamed the Great Dane, began his NFL journey in 1982 after being drafted by the New Orleans Saints. His powerful and accurate leg made him one of the most reliable kickers in the league, and he became a staple of the Saints' special teams for over a decade. Over the years, Andersen went on to play for 4 other teams, including the Atlanta Falcons, Kansas City Chiefs, Minnesota Vikings, and New York Giants. One of the highlights of Andersen's career came during a time with the Atlanta Falcons. In the 1998 NFC Championship game, Andersen nailed a 38-yard field goal in overtime to send the Falcons to their first Super Bowl. The closest challenger to Andersen's record was Adam Vinatieri, who retired with 365 career games, still 17 games shy. While Vinatieri had an incredible career of his own, it highlighted just how difficult it is to reach 382 games. Modern players are less likely to match such longevity due to changes in the game, including an increased emphasis on specialized skill sets and team turnover. Number 2 brings us something I would call an Annie record. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers losing streak stands as one of the saddest records in the NFL. When the Buccaneers entered the league as an expansion team in 1976, they were ill-equipped for immediate success. Expansion teams were typically given a mix of draft picks and cast-offs from other rosters, but Tampa Bay's roster was particularly thin on talent. Offensively, they were a disaster, scoring only 125 points over 14 games, an average of just 8.9 points per game. They were shut out 5 times that season and failed to score more than 16 points in any game. Quarterback Steve Spurrier, who later became a famous college coach, led an anemic passing attack, throwing for only 1,628 yards and 7 touchdowns all season. Defensively, things weren't much better. The Buccaneers allowed 412 points that year, the most in the league. Opposing teams often ran up the score, as Tampa Bay couldn't generate much pressure on the quarterback or stop the run. Their failures carried over into 1977, where they added another 12 losses to their streak. Through their first 26 games, the Buccaneers were outscored by an astonishing 644 to 125 margin. The team became a laughingstock. McKay, known for his sharp wit, famously joked, "We didn't tackle well today, but we made up for it by not blocking." The streak finally ended on December 11, 1977, when Tampa Bay defeated the New Orleans Saints 33-14 on the road. The victory was so monumental for the franchise that it celebrated like a championship. After the win, Bucs fans stormed the field in joy, and McKay said jokingly, 3 or 4 plane crashes and we're in the playoffs. This 26-game streak remains a record because it's almost impossible for a team to replicate such prolonged failure. Sounds like a challenge, right? The NFL's parity-driven systems, including a salary cap, free agency, and expanded playoffs, make it difficult for teams to stay consistently bad for long. Even the worst teams tend to win a game or 2 each season. By the way, the Buccaneers eventually turned things around, becoming Super Bowl champions in 2002 and again in 2021. We've arrived at number 1. Contract records in the NFL are no joke, but I don't think a quarterback will top this one anytime soon. Patrick Mahomes' $500 million contract with the Kansas City Chiefs is a record-setting deal that redefined the NFL's financial landscape. At the time of the signing, Mahomes was just 24 years old, but had already achieved what most players can only dream of. He was named the NFL MVP in 2018 after throwing for 5,097 yards and 50 touchdowns, becoming only the 3rd quarterback in league history to hit the 50-touchdown mark in a single season. He followed that by leading the Chiefs to a Super Bowl 54 victory, earning Super Bowl MVP honors in the process. Mahomes' ability to make jaw-dropping plays, coupled with his leadership, made him the face of the franchise and arguably the NFL. The contract structure is as unique as the player himself. It's a 10-year extension, tying Mahomes to the Chiefs through 2031, on top of the 2 years remaining on his rookie deal at the time. The deal includes $477 million guaranteed mechanisms, with $141 million fully guaranteed if certain conditions are met. The rolling guarantees are designed to ensure Mahomes gets paid, while also giving the Chiefs flexibility to manage their roster. To put this into perspective, Mahomes' contract dwarfed the previous record for NFL quarterbacks. At the time, Russell Wilson held the top spot with a 4-year, $140 million deal with the Seahawks. Mahomes' deal also surpassed Mike Trout's $426.5 million MLB contract, setting a new high-water mark across sports. What records did I miss? And what is your favorite NFL record story? Share those in the comments, and I'll include them in part 2. Don't forget to subscribe.